Welcome back to Lena's Romantasy collection. In part 1, she broke the law to become a general. They thought the hard part was over. They thought love was an F. They were wrong. We are back with the Omega's command. Sloane Mercer is no longer hiding in the shadows. She is a mother, a wife, and the most dangerous strategist in the Northern Territory. But when a ghost from the past targets her son and breaks her husband's mind, the rules of war change. Are you Team Sloane? Then prove it. Smash the like button and comment Protocol 0 below to authorize this mission. Chapter 1 starts now.
Chapter 1. The Morning Hunger. The problem with being married to the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces wasn't the politics or the assassination attempts, or the fact that he could legally commandeer a tank if he couldn't find a parking spot. The problem was that he was insatiable. Varic, I gasped, my fingers digging into the hard muscle of his shoulders. We have a briefing at 0800. Cancel it, Varic growled against the sensitive skin of my throat. He wasn't asking, he was demanding. His large hands were everywhere, gripping my waist, tangled in my hair, tracing the new, faint silver stretch marks on my hips that pregnancy had left behind. Most alphas would have been repulsed by the changes in an Omega's body. Varic treated them like a map to buried treasure. He worshipped them. He moved over me, his weight heavy and grounding, pinning me to the mattress of our penthouse. The bond between us, that psychic golden tether that connected our inner wolves, was vibrating so hard it felt like a physical hum in the room. I can't cancel the budget review, I managed to say, though my resolution was melting faster than ice in a furnace. If I don't sign off on the fuel requisition, the tanks don't move. Varic lifted his head. His eyes were blown wide, the pupils swallowing the iris, black holes of pure alpha lust. He looked feral. He looked magnificent. "Let them walk," he murmured. Then he kissed me. It wasn't a gentle good morning peck. It was a claiming. It was a reminder that before I was High Commander Mercer and before he was Supreme Commander Vane, we were just this. Two magnets crashing together. His tongue swept into my mouth, demanding submission, and my body answered automatically. I arched into him, a whimper tearing from my throat as I felt the hard ridge of him pressing against my thigh. The heat was instantaneous. It wasn't a biological heat cycle, thank God, I had just finished one, but with Varic, every touch felt like the edge of a precipice. He shifted, settling between my legs, and the friction sent a jolt of electricity straight to my brain, short-circuiting my logic centers. "You smell," he whispered, nuzzling my scent gland, "like milk and honey and mine. And you smell," I breathed, wrapping my legs around his waist, "like you're trying to make me late on purpose." Guilty. He thrust forward, a slow, agonizing slide that made my toes curl. I forgot the budget, I forgot the tanks, I forgot my own name. There was only the rhythm, the friction, and the low, grumbling growl in his chest that vibrated through my own ribs. We moved together in the morning light, a tangle of limbs and breath. It was desperate. Even after a year of marriage, maybe because of the marriage. The higher we climbed in rank, the more the world tried to pull us apart. The only time we were truly safe, truly unreachable, was here, in this bed, connected. Just as the friction was building to a breaking point, just as I was about to shatter, a sound cut through the heavy, heated air. Wah! A high-pitched, demanding cry from the nursery down the hall. Varic froze. I froze. The tension in the room didn't break, it just shifted. The lust in Varic's eyes battled with the protective instinct of a father. "Ignore it," he tried, though he sounded unconvincing. "He has a nanny." "He doesn't want the nanny," I panted, pushing gently against his chest. "He wants the milk bar, and unlike you, he doesn't take no for an answer." Varic groaned, dropping his forehead to my shoulder in defeat. "I am the Supreme Commander. I command armies. I topple dictators. Why am I losing a negotiation to a 6-month-old? "Because he has my attitude and your lungs," I smirked, sliding out from under him. I grabbed his silk robe and wrapped it around myself, tying the sash tight. "Cold shower, Commander. I'll see you in the kitchen."
Chapter 2. Postpartum Protocol. Walking into the Citadel these days felt different. Before, I walked in with my head down, hiding my scent, praying no one noticed the curve of my hips. Now, I walked in with a stroller that cost more than a small car, flanked by 2 armed guards, wearing a uniform that had been tailored to accentuate exactly who and what I was. "Morning, High Commander," the desk sergeant barked, snapping a crisp salute. "At ease, Sergeant," I said, not breaking stride. "And tell your team to stop cooing at the baby. He's sleeping, and if you wake him, I'm putting you all on sanitation duty." "Yes, ma'am." I pushed the stroller into the private elevator. My assistant, Jess, who had been promoted to chief of staff, was already waiting inside, tablet in hand. "Schedule looks tight," Jess said, eyeing the sleeping infant in the stroller. Ryan was fast asleep, clutching a plush wolf toy that Varic had bought him. "You have the council meeting at 0900, the press briefing at 10:30, and Senator Thorne, Elise's uncle, is requesting a private audience regarding the Omega integration bill." "Senator Thorne can wait," I said, checking my reflection in the elevator's chrome doors. I looked tired. The concealer under my eyes was doing heavy lifting. "He just wants to complain that Omegas are too emotional to hold guns. I'm not in the mood to listen to a man who's never held anything heavier than a brandy sniffer tell me about recoil." "He's threatening to block the budget," Jess warned. "Let him try," I said. My voice dropped to that icy tone that made recruits tremble. "I'll audit his personal finances publicly. I'm sure the voters would love to know how much he spends on consultants in the lower sector." Jess grinned. "God, I missed you when you were on maternity leave." The elevator doors slid open to the command floor. The buzz of activity hit me instantly. This was my domain. Holographic maps flickered in the air. Analysts argued in hushed tones. I parked the stroller in the secure playpen I had installed in the corner of my office, glass-walled, soundproofed, and bulletproofed. I engaged the locks. "Stay safe, little wolf," I whispered, pressing my hand to the glass. I turned around to find a man standing in front of my desk. He wasn't military. He wore a tailored suit that screamed politician, and he had a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hi, Commander Mercer," he said, smoothing his tie. "Or should I say, Mrs. Vane? It's so confusing these days knowing how to address a woman who wears her husband's rank." I didn't blink. I walked past him, sat in my chair, and deliberately didn't offer him a seat. "It's General Mercer," I corrected, picking up a stylus. "And I earned my rank on the field, Councilman. Unlike you, I didn't inherit your seat from your daddy. Now, you have exactly 30 seconds to tell me why you're in my office without an appointment before I have security escort you out, and I'll have them use the stairs." The councilman's smile faltered. He looked at the stroller in the corner, then back at me. "I'm here to deliver a message," he said, his voice losing its oily charm. "From the Concerned Citizens Committee. We feel that perhaps your focus is divided. A mother's place is with her child, not deciding the fate of nations." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk. "My child is in a bulletproof box 5 feet away from me. My focus is laser sharp. And if you think motherhood makes me soft, Councilman, I invite you to remember that a female wolf is the only thing in the forest more dangerous than the male." I tapped the comms unit on my desk. "Security, remove the trash from my office." The councilman turned red. "You are making enemies, Mercer." "I collect them," I smiled sweetly. "Goodbye." Chapter 3. The Black Box. By lunchtime, the adrenaline of the morning had worn off, replaced by the dull thrum of exhaustion. Ryan had woken up, eaten, and was now happily chewing on the leg of my desk while I tried to review the supply chain reports. Varic walked in at 1200 hours exactly. He didn't knock. He never knocked. "You look like you're plotting a murder," he noted, walking over to scoop Ryan up from the floor. The baby squealed, grabbing Varic's dog tags and drooling on them.
Councilman Finch, I muttered, rubbing my temples. He stopped by to remind me that I should be baking cookies instead of running the logistics division. Varic's face darkened instantly. The playful father vanished. The high commander appeared. Finch was here? Did he threaten you? He annoyed me, I corrected. There's a difference. Don't go growling at him, Varic. I handled it. If you intervene, it just proves his point that I need an alpha to fight my battles. Varic sighed, sitting on the edge of my desk, balancing our son on his knee. You are too stubborn for your own good, Sloane. You don't have to fight the whole world alone anymore. I know, I softened, reaching out to squeeze his hand. But I have to be seen fighting. You know that. Sir? Ma'am? Jess appeared at the door, looking pale. She was holding a package. It was a small, sleek black box wrapped in a red ribbon. No return address. This just came through the courier sorting. It bypassed the standard screening because it had a level 1 priority code. Only the board has those codes. I frowned. Who sent it? It doesn't say, but the tag says, "For the little wolf." Varic went still. He handed Ryan to me immediately, his body shifting into a protective stance. Put him in the secure pen, now. I didn't argue. I placed Ryan back in the glass enclosure and locked it. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. A package for the baby? With top-level clearance codes? Varic walked over to Jess. He took the box carefully. He sniffed it. No explosives. No chemical signatures. He pulled a knife from his belt and sliced the ribbon. He opened the lid. I held my breath. Inside, resting on a bed of black velvet, was a pacifier. But it wasn't a normal pacifier. It was an old-fashioned military-issue silencer for a handgun, modified with a rubber nipple at the end. And beneath it was a note, handwritten on thick, expensive cardstock. Silence is golden, General. Teach him to be quiet now, or we will silence him later. The air left the room. I stared at the object. It was a grotesque threat, a promise of violence directed at an infant. Varic didn't speak. A low, terrifying sound began to build in his chest, a growl so deep it rattled the windows. The box crumpled in his hand. They threatened him, Varic whispered. His voice didn't sound human. They threatened my pup. I looked at the box, and then at Ryan, who was happily babbling in his pen, unaware that someone wanted him dead. The sass was gone, the exhaustion was gone. Cold, hard rage flooded my veins. They didn't just threaten him, Varic, I said, my voice shaking with fury. They just declared war.
I am initiating Protocol 0, Varic barked, storming toward the door. We are locking down the Citadel. No one in, no one out. I want every councilman, every senator, every janitor vetted. I want to know who leaked that priority code. Varic, stop, I said, stepping in front of him. He stopped, but he was vibrating with energy. His eyes were flashing between black and brown, his wolf fighting for control. Move, Sloane. They threatened our son. Exactly, I said, keeping my voice calm, though my own hands were shaking. Which means they want a reaction. They want the mad dog vein to come out. They want you to lock down the city, terrify the citizens, and prove that you're unstable. I don't care about public opinion, he roared, slamming his fist against the wall. A crack appeared in the plaster. I care about keeping you alive. And so do I shouted back, stepping into his space. I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me. Grabbed the face, forcing him to look at me. But if we lock down the Citadel, we show fear. We show them that a single box rattled the Supreme Commander. We cannot hide, Varic. I am not hiding. I am protecting. You are suffocating, I countered. We have the Anniversary Gala tonight, the one celebrating the Mercer Act. If we don't show up, the rumors will start. They'll say we're weak. They'll say the alliance is crumbling.
To hell with the gala, Varic spat. You are not going out there. You are taking Ryan and you are going to the bunker. I am not going to a bunker, I snapped. I am the High Commander of Logistics. I do not cower in a hole while my husband cleans up the mess. I am a soldier, Varic. You are an Omega. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Varic froze, realizing what he'd said. The regret hit his face instantly. I took a step back, the hurt slicing through me deeper than any knife. Is that what you see? I whispered. After everything? After I saved you from Cross? After I rewrote the laws? When the chips are down, you still just see a fragile little Omega who needs to be tucked away? No, Varic choked out, reaching for me. Sloane, no, that's not what I meant. I meant your instincts, your biology. You are precious to me. I can't lose you. My wolf, it can't handle the thought of you in danger. I swatted his hand away. My biology is not a defect, Varic. My instincts are what kept me alive for 5 years under your nose. If someone is hunting our son, I don't want to hide. I want to hunt them back. I walked over to the playpen and unlocked it, picking up Ryan. He felt heavy and warm in my arms. The stakes had never been this high. I am going to the gala tonight. I am going to wear my dress uniform. I am going to hold my head high, and if anyone looks at me wrong, I am going to make them regret it. I turned to the door. You can join me, Supreme Commander, or you can stay here and fix the wall you just broke.
Chapter 5. The Red Carpet. The gala was held in the Grand Hall of the Capitol, a massive glass dome that overlooked the city. It was a sea of dress uniforms, silk gowns, and fake smiles. I hated it, but I looked flawless. I wore a midnight blue gown that was cut like a tactical uniform, stiff collar, sharp shoulders, but made of silk that flowed like water. My hair was pulled back tight. My scent was unmasked, peaches and steel, amplified by the stress hormones I was suppressing. Varic stood beside me. He hadn't spoken much since our fight in the office, but his physical presence was overwhelming. He was in full dress blues, medals gleaming, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back. He was scanning every face, every waiter, every shadow. Ryan was safe back at the penthouse with a detail of 4 Praetorian guards, but I felt phantom weight in my arms where he should have been. Smile, I muttered through my teeth as cameras flashed. You look like you're about to execute the caterer. The caterer smells like sulfur, Varic grumbled. That's truffle oil, darling. We moved through the crowd. I shook hands. I accepted congratulations on the baby. I played the part of the happy, progressive symbol of the new age, but my eyes were scanning too. Who sent the box? Was it Senator Thorne sipping champagne in the corner? Was it Councilman Finch avoiding my gaze near the orchestra? Generals, a voice spoke up. We turned. It was a young captain, a beta I didn't recognize. He looked nervous, sweating. Ma'am, sir, I have a message from the perimeter security. They found a breach in Sector 4. Varic stiffened instantly. What kind of breach? Jamming devices, sir. They're blocking the comms relay. I frowned. Sector 4 was the transport route. It was nowhere near the gala. It was a distraction. My strategist brain clicked into gear. Why jam the comms in Sector 4 if the target is here? Unless the target wasn't here. Unless they wanted to cut off our ability to call for help from here. Varic, I whispered, gripping his arm. It's a trap. We need to leave, now. Agreed, Varic said. He tapped his earpiece. Alpha 1 to detail. Evacuate immediately. Secure the exits. Screech! A high-pitched feedback noise tore through the speaker system of the grand hall. The guests screamed, covering their ears. The lights flickered and died, plunging the massive dome into darkness. Get down, Varic roared. He tackled me, throwing his body over me just as the glass ceiling of the dome shattered. But it wasn't a bomb, it was gas. Canisters dropped from the catwalks, hissing as they hit the floor. Thick, purple smoke began to fill the room instantly. I inhaled a shallow breath before I could stop myself. It tasted like copper and ozone. Sloane!
Varic's voice was panicked. He was grabbing for me in the dark. I tried to reach for him, but my limbs felt heavy. My vision swam. The bond, that golden tether in my mind, suddenly flared with blinding pain and then went silent. Varic? I croaked. I couldn't feel him. I couldn't feel his fear, his anger, his presence. It was like someone had taken a pair of scissors and snipped the wire connecting our souls. The smoke swirled. Figures in gas masks rappelled from the broken ceiling. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was Varic fighting 3 of them, his roar of rage silent to my deafened ears. Then, nothing.
Chapter 6. The Silent Wake. Waking up is usually a slow process, a drift from darkness to light. This was not that. This was a slam. I gasped, my body jerking upright, my lungs burning as if I had inhaled broken glass. The air smelled of mold, damp concrete, and stale urine. I wasn't in the grand hall anymore. I wasn't in my silk gown. I was in a chair, my wrists zip-tied to the armrests, in a room that looked like an abandoned slaughterhouse. But the physical pain, the headache, the chafing plastic on my wrists, was nothing compared to the silence. It was deafening. For the last year, ever since Varic claimed me, there had been a hum in the back of my mind, a golden, warm static that told me he is here, he is safe, he loves you. It was the bond, the biological tether that linked a mated alpha and omega. Now, static, dead air. I reached out with my mind, frantically clawing at the emptiness. Varic? Varic? Nothing. No answer. No comfort. Just a cold, gaping void where my soulmate used to be. Panic will only metabolize the toxin faster, High Commander. A voice spoke from the shadows. I snapped my head up. My vision blurred, then sharpened. A man stepped into the circle of dim light cast by the single bulb above me. He was older, scarred, wearing a military fatigue jacket with the patches ripped off. You must be the Iron Order I've heard so much about. I expected more. You look like a retired gym teacher who's angry about his pension. Kale smiled, but his eyes were dead. I am Colonel Kale, former head of biological warfare, and you are the Omega who polluted our gene pool. I cleaned it up, I spat. I got rid of the rot, like you. Kale leaned forward. Did you? Or did you just distract a powerful male with your pheromones and trick him into handing you the keys? We know about the bond, Sloane. We know it makes him weak. It makes him prioritize you over the state. He stood up and walked behind me. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I flinched, my skin crawling. That gas you inhaled? It's a neural severing agent. We developed it during the rebellion to break interrogation subjects. It targets the oxytocin receptors in the alpha brain. It dissolves the bond. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. A mating bond is permanent. Nothing is permanent, Kale said. We didn't just break the bond, Sloane. We inverted it. Right now, your husband is waking up in the ruins of the Grand Hall, but he won't remember the love. He won't remember the baby. He will only remember that an Omega has ensnared him, and his biology will scream at him to destroy the threat. He cut the zip ties with a knife. You're free to go, General. Go find your husband. See if he still wants to play house. Chapter 7. The Long Walk Home. They dumped me on the outskirts of the city, near the industrial sector. No phone, no credits, just me shivering in a torn silk gown, barefoot on the asphalt. But I didn't stop. I ran. My feet bled, my lungs burned, but the terror driving me was absolute. He will only remember that an Omega has ensnared him. I had to get to the Citadel. I had to get to Ryan. If Varic was feral, if he didn't know us, stop it, I ordered myself. Varic loves you. He is stronger than some chemical cocktail. It took me 2 hours to reach the perimeter of the Citadel. The city was in chaos. Sirens wailed, hover tanks blocked the main avenues. Halt! A spotlight blinded me.
3 soldiers trained their rifles on my chest. "Identify yourself." "High Commander Sloane Mercer," I screamed, shielding my eyes. "Code Alpha 9 Gold. Stand down." The soldiers hesitated. One of them stepped forward, a young beta corporal. "General? My God, we thought you were dead. The hall? The gas?" "Where is Varic?" I demanded, pushing past the rifle barrel. "Where is the Supreme Commander?" The corporal looked terrified. He exchanged a glance with his squadmate. "Ma'am, they took him to the containment wing, medical sector. He injured 3 paramedics on the way. It's bad." "Take me to him," I ordered. "Now." "Ma'am, Protocol 0 is in effect. Dr. Eris has locked down the wing. No one is allowed in, especially not—" He trailed off, looking at my neck where my scent gland was pulsing with distress. "Especially not what?" I stepped closer, channeling every ounce of command I had left. "Especially not his mate? I am his wife. I am his commander. And if you don't put me in a vehicle right now, Corporal, I will have you court-martialed for obstruction of justice before the sun comes up." The corporal swallowed hard. "Yes, General, right this way." As we sped toward the citadel in the back of the transport, I pressed a hand to my chest. The silence in my head was still there. "Varic," I whispered into the void, "please be there. Please come back to me." But for the first time in our history, he didn't answer. Chapter 8. The Beast in the Basement. The medical sector of the Citadel was usually a place of sterile calm. Tonight, it sounded like a zoo. Even through the soundproof doors of the containment wing, I could hear it. Roar. It wasn't a human shout. It was a primal, guttural sound of pure aggression. It shook the floorboards. Dr. Eris met me at the airlock. He looked frazzled, his lab coat torn, a scratch bleeding on his cheek. "General Mercer," he gasped, looking relieved and terrified. "Thank God. We didn't know. We thought you were taken." "I escaped," I said, shortly, brushing past him. "Report. What is happening to him?" "The toxins," Eris explained, struggling to keep up with my frantic pace down the corridor. "It's a modified neurotoxin. It's attacking his limbic system. It's induced a state of hyper-aggressive amnesia. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know who we are. He thinks he's captured behind enemy lines." "He's in a feral state," I translated, stopping in front of the heavy blast doors labeled Subject 1. "Is he sedated?" "We tried," Eris said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We hit him with enough tranquilizers to drop a rhino. His metabolism burned through it in minutes. He's running on pure adrenaline and alpha rage. If we go in there, he will kill us." "He won't kill me," I said, reaching for the door panel. "General, no." Eris grabbed my arm. "You don't understand. His scans, the recognition centers of his brain are dark. To him, you aren't his mate. You're just an Omega, and right now he sees everything as a threat." "I am his anchor," I said, shaking Eris off. "I am the only thing that can bring him back. If I don't go in there, he'll burn his own mind out fighting the drugs. I have to ground him." "It's suicide. It's marriage," I corrected. I punched in my override code. The light turned green, the heavy hydraulic locks hissed and disengaged. The door slid open. The room inside was a reinforced cell designed for interrogating super soldiers. It was stripped bare, and in the center of the room, chained to the floor by heavy magnetic cuffs, was my husband. He was shirtless, his skin glistening with sweat. His muscles were corded tight, veins bulging in his neck. His head was hung low, panting. At the sound of the door, his head snapped up. I stopped breathing. The face was Varic's. The eyes were not. They were black, empty, void of any recognition, any warmth, any humanity. They were the eyes of a shark looking at a seal. "Varic?" I whispered, taking a step forward. He didn't speak. He pulled against the chains, the metal groaning under the strain. He bared his teeth in a snarl that sent a primal spike of terror straight into my womb. He didn't see Sloane. He saw meat. Chapter 9. Strangers. "Varic, it's me," I said, keeping my voice low and steady, the way I used to when we were in bed and he had a nightmare. It's Sloane. Look at me. I took another step. The door hissed shut behind me, sealing us in. Varic lunged. The chains caught him short, jerking him back with a violent clang. If they hadn't been there, he would have torn my throat out in a second. "Get out," he rasped. His voice was a ruined wreck of gravel. Omega, get out. "I'm not leaving you," I said, forcing my legs to stop trembling. I needed to scent him. If he could smell me, really smell me, underneath the fear, the bond might spark. "You're confused. You've been drugged. I'm your mate." "I have no mate," he snarled. He paced the limits of his chains like a caged tiger. "I am alone. I am hunting." "You have a son," I tried, tears stinging my eyes. "Rian, he's at home. He's waiting for you." At the mention of the name, Varic flinched. A flicker of pain crossed his face, followed by a wave of intense confusion. He grabbed his head, groaning. "Noise," he muttered. "Lies. Poison." "It's not a lie." I stepped into his reach. It was the most dangerous thing I had ever done. I was within striking distance of a feral alpha who weighed 250 pounds of muscle and rage. I reached out a trembling hand and touched his chest, right over his heart. His skin was burning hot, feverish. "Feel this," I whispered. "Feel the bond. It's still there, Varic. Dig for it." For a second, he froze. The black in his eyes receded just a fraction, revealing a sliver of warm brown. He looked at my hand on his chest. He inhaled sharply, smelling the peaches and distress on my skin. "Sloane?" he breathed. It was a question, a ghost of a memory. "Yes," I sobbed, stepping closer, wrapping my arms around his waist. "Yes, I'm here. Come back to me." He lowered his head, resting his chin on top of my head. His arms came up, hesitating, then wrapping around me. For a heartbeat, I thought I had won. I thought the love was stronger than the poison. Then he stiffened. His nose brushed my neck, right over the scent gland, and he didn't purr, he didn't sigh, he growled. "You smell," he whispered, his voice turning cold as ice. "Like him." "What?" I pulled back, confused. "The enemy," Varic roared. His eyes went black again. The memory was gone, replaced by a hallucination. The gas had twisted my scent. To him, I didn't smell like his wife. I smelled like the man who had tortured him. He shoved me, hard. I flew backward, crashing into the steel wall of the cell. My head cracked against the metal. I slid to the floor, stunned, gasping for air. Varic strained against the chains, snapping his teeth inches from my face. "Tricks, get out of my head. I will kill you. I will kill you all." Chapter 10. The Mother's Burden. The security team dragged me out of the cell a second later. They hit Varic with stun batons, driving him back while Dr. Eris pulled me into the corridor. "Seal it," Eris yelled. "Lock it down. Level 5 containment." The blast doors slammed shut, muffling the sounds of Varic's rage. I slumped against the wall, sliding down until I hit the floor. My head was spinning. There was blood on the back of my neck where I had hit the wall, but the physical pain was nothing. He had looked at me and wanted to kill me. The bond wasn't just silent, it was twisted. "General," Dr. Eris said gently, kneeling beside me with a penlight. "Pupils are equal. Mild concussion. You're lucky. If he hadn't been chained—" "He didn't know me," I whispered, staring at the floor. "He thought I was the enemy." "It's the toxin," Eris said. "It rewrites the friend-foe coding in the amygdala. Until we can synthesize an antidote, he is the most dangerous biological weapon on the planet." "General Mercer?" I looked up. It was Director Hale, the head of the board. He was standing at the end of the hall, flanked by 2 MPs. He looked grim. "General," Hale said, not offering a hand to help me up, "the Supreme Commander is compromised." "He is sick," I snapped, forcing myself to stand up. He is not compromised. He needs treatment." "He attacked his mate," Hale said coldly. "That is the definition of feral. The protocols are clear, Sloane. An alpha who enters a feral state cannot hold command, and he cannot be left alive if he poses a threat to the Citadel." "You are not putting him down," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "If you touch one hair on his head, I will burn this building to the ground." "We aren't going to execute him," Hale said, adjusting his cuffs. "Yet, but he is stripped of rank effectively immediately. And you," he looked at me with pity, "you are a single mother with a high-stress job and a husband who wants to murder you. The board has determined that perhaps Rian would be safer in protective custody, away from this mess." The threat was subtle, but it hit me like a physical blow. They wanted to take my command, they wanted to take my husband, and now they wanted to take my son. I wiped the blood from my neck. I straightened my torn dress. I looked at the closed door of Varic's cell, then at Hale. The sadness evaporated. The grief locked itself away in a box deep in my chest. I couldn't be a wife right now. I couldn't be a victim. I had to be the High Commander. "Director Hale," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion, "if you attempt to remove my child from my custody, I will consider it an act of treason, and I will respond with lethal force. As for the Supreme Commander, until he is recovered, I am the ranking officer in this territory." Hale blinked. "You? You can't lead the Alpha Corps. You're an Omega." I stepped closer to him, letting my scent flare, sharp, angry, and dominant. "I am the Omega who owns the Alpha in that cage, and until he wakes up, I am the only thing standing between you and the rebels who did this. So get out of my way. I have a war to win." I walked past him, boots clicking on the linoleum, heading for the war room. I was alone. The bond was dead. My husband was a monster, but I was still the strategist, and someone was going to pay.
Chapter 11. The Empty Throne. The war room was silent when I entered. Usually, this room was a cacophony of shouting voices, strategic arguments, and the hum of the holographic table. Today, the silence was heavy, thick with judgment and fear. 12 generals and directors sat around the oval table. At the head of the table, the Supreme Commander's chair, black leather, high-backed, imposing, sat empty. I walked in. I hadn't slept in 30 hours. My dress uniform was fresh, pressed by Jess, but underneath it, my body felt brittle. My head was still throbbing from where Varic had thrown me into the wall, but I didn't limp. I marched. "General Mercer," Director Hale said, not bothering to stand. "We were just discussing the transition of power. Given the incapacitation of the Supreme Commander, General Pike here has volunteered to step in as interim lead." General Pike was a man whose neck was wider than his forehead. He smirked at me, leaning back in his chair like he already owned the room. "It's a temporary measure, of course," Pike grunted, "until Vane is put down or cured. We need an alpha at the helm, Sloane. The troops are rattled. They need to smell strength." I stopped at the foot of the table. I looked at Pike. I looked at Hale. Then I walked the length of the room, past them all, and stood behind Varic's empty chair. I placed my hands on the leather backrest. It still smelled like him, sandalwood and power. The scent hit me like a physical punch, a reminder of the bond that was currently screaming static in my head. "Focus," I told myself. "Grieve later, lead now." "General Mercer," I said, my voice cool and clear, "you haven't led a combat mission since the borders were drawn. Your last victory was auditing the cafeteria budget." Pike's face turned purple. "Now look here, little lady." "And Director Hale," I continued, cutting him off, "you seem to be under the impression that the Supreme Commander's authority is transferred by a vote. It is not. It is transferred by Protocol 7 Alpha." "Protocol 7 Alpha applies to death in the line of duty," Hale argued.
Protocol 7 Alpha, I corrected, pulling a pistol from my holster and slamming it on the table with a deafening clack, states that in the event of a compromised mental state, command falls to the highest-ranking officer with direct field knowledge of the current threat. I leaned forward. My eyes scanned the room. The threat is the Iron Order. I am the one who discovered them. I am the one who tracked them. And I am the one who is going to burn them out. I pulled the chair out. It was too big for me. I didn't care. I filled the space with pure, unadulterated attitude. Now, I said, picking up Varic's stylus, get out of my seat, Pike, and pull up the satellite feeds for Sector 4. We have a terrorist cell to hunt.
Chapter 12. The Nanny Protocol. Taking the war room was the easy part. Men with egos were predictable. You just had to bruise them. The hard part was the nursery. I stood in the doorway of the penthouse, watching Jess pack a tactical go bag for Ryan. Diapers, formula, wet wipes, and a Kevlar baby vest. It was the most depressing sight of my life. "The safe house is ready," Jess said softly, not looking at me. She knew if she looked at me, we'd both start crying. "It's off the grid, the lower sector. Ratbag set it up." "Ratbag?" I raised an eyebrow. "I'm entrusting my son to a black market drug dealer?" "He's loyal to you, General," Jess said. "He says you're the only reason he's not in prison. And he has unconventional security measures. No digital footprint. The Iron Order won't find him there." I walked over to the crib. Ryan was awake, chewing on his own toes. He looked so much like Varic it hurt to look at him. The dark hair, the serious expression. He reached up for me, making a grabby hand motion. "Mama." I picked him up, burying my face in his soft neck. He smelled like milk and innocence. He didn't know his father was a monster in a cage downstairs. He didn't know his mother was about to start a war. "General," a voice came from the hallway. It wasn't a guard. It was a squad of 6 women. They were young. They wore mismatched fatigues. Some were Omegas, some were Betas. They were the rejects I had personally trained in the logic division, the ones the Alphas said were too soft for war. "We heard about the threat," the leader, a fierce little Omega named Kyra, said. She was holding a sniper rifle that was almost as big as she was. "Jess called us. We're the detail." I looked at them. They weren't the Praetorian Guard. They didn't look impressive. But I knew Kyra could hit a target from 2 miles in a hurricane. I knew they would die before they let anyone touch my son. "He likes warm milk at 1400 hours, I said, my throat tight. I handed Ryan to Kyra. "And he hates the blue pacifier, only the green one." "We got him, boss," Kyra said, tucking Ryan securely against her chest. "Nobody gets past us." I watched them leave through the service elevator. The doors closed, taking my heart with them. The penthouse was silent, empty. I walked to the liquor cabinet, poured a shot of Varic's whiskey, and downed it in one burn. Then I smashed the glass in the sink. Right, now I have nothing left to lose.
Chapter 13. The Interrogation. "We caught one." The message popped up on my datapad at 0300 hours. I was already in the elevator before I finished reading it. They had found a straggler from the Gala attack, an Iron Order foot soldier who had been knocked unconscious by the gas and left behind by his comrades. He was currently strapped to a chair in Interrogation Room B. General Pike was in there with him. I could hear Pike shouting through the glass. "Tell me where the base is, you traitorous scum, or I'll break every finger you have." Pike punctuated the threat by slamming a fist into the prisoner's face. The prisoner, a young alpha with a shaved head, just spat blood and laughed. "Do it. Pain is clarity." I swiped my keycard and walked in. "Get out, Pike," I said calmly. Pike turned, sweating and red-faced. "I almost broke him, Mercer. He's tough." "He's bored," I corrected. "You're using brute force on a fanatic. They train for pain. You're just giving him an adrenaline rush. Leave." Pike grumbled but stormed out. I was alone with the prisoner. I didn't hit him. I didn't shout. I pulled up a chair and sat down. I opened a file on my datapad. "Private Miller," I read. "Dishonorable discharge 3 years ago. Gambling debts. A sick mother in Sector 9. The prisoner stiffened slightly.
My mother is dead. No, I tapped the screen. She's in a state-run hospice facility. It's expensive, but someone has been paying her bills anonymously for the last 6 months. The Iron Order, I assume. Miller glared at me. I don't know what you're talking about. Here's the thing about treason, Miller, I said, my voice conversational. It freezes assets. The moment I sign this digital warrant, your mother's funding stops. She gets evicted from hospice. She goes to the street ward, and they don't have pain medication in the street ward. Miller pulled against his restraints. You wouldn't. I am an Omega, I smiled, a sharp, shark-like expression. According to your Colonel Kale, I'm a manipulative, heartless creature who used sex to steal an empire. Do you really think I care about one old woman? It was a bluff. I would never hurt an innocent civilian, but Miller didn't know that. He believed the propaganda his own cult had fed him about me. He believed I was a monster. Good. I'd be the monster. You have 10 seconds, I said, hovering my finger over the execute button on the screen. Coordinates, or Mama Miller is on the street tonight. Wait, screamed Miller, sweat pouring down his face. Wait, it's the old hydro plant, Sector 7, underground level. That's where the lab is. I lowered the pad. See? Was that hard? I stood up and walked to the door. General, Miller called out, you won't cut her funding. No, I said, pausing at the threshold. I just doubled it. Unlike you, I actually take care of my responsibilities. Chapter 14. The Video Leak. We had the location, Sector 7. I was mobilizing the strike team, Alpha Squads 1 through 4, led by commanders I trusted, when the screens in the war room were hijacked. Ma'am, we're losing control of the broadcast feed, a tech shouted, typing frantically. Someone is overriding the civilian network. The massive holographic map in the center of the room flickered and vanished, replaced by a video. It was grainy, high-contrast footage. It showed a steel cage, and inside the cage was Varic. The audio was cranked up. Roar! Varic threw himself against the bars, foaming at the mouth. He looked insane. He looked terrifying. He grabbed a metal food tray and ripped it in half with his bare hands. The camera zoomed in on his face, the black eyes, the feral snarl. A voiceover played. It was Kale's voice. Citizens of the Northern Territory, look at your supreme commander. This is the beast leading you. He is genetically unstable. He is a danger to you and your children. The board is hiding the truth. The Omega General has poisoned his mind. The feed cut to black. Then chaos. Every phone in the war room started ringing at once. Riots in the lower sector. The stock exchange is crashing. Civilians are storming the perimeter gates, demanding answers. General Pike looked at the screen, pale as a ghost. It's over, he whispered. They've seen him. They know he's feral. The government will collapse by noon. I stared at the black screen. My heart hurt for Varic, exposed, humiliated, used as a weapon against his own people. But panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. Turn it back on, I ordered. Ma'am, the feed is down. Not their feed, I snapped. Ours. Get a camera crew in here, now. Put me on every screen in the city. You can't go live, Hale argued. We need to craft a statement. We need to deny it. Denying the truth makes us liars, I said, smoothing my jacket. I'm going to own it. 5 minutes later, I was standing in front of the camera. The red light blinked on. I looked directly into the lens. I didn't hide the bruise on my head. I didn't hide the exhaustion. Citizens, I said, you just saw a video of Supreme Commander Vane. It was real. I let the silence hang there. He was attacked, I continued, my voice gaining strength. He was poisoned by a terrorist group known as the Iron Order. They did this because they are afraid to fight him fair. They did this to scare you, to make you think that strength is dangerous. I leaned in. But here is the truth. My husband is fighting a war inside his own body right now. He is fighting to come back to us, and while he fights, I am holding the line. The Iron Order thinks that showing you a monster will make you run, but they forgot one thing. I narrowed my eyes. We are the Northern Territory. We don't run from monsters. We hunt them.
Chapter 15. The Ultimatum. The speech worked. The riots slowed. The people were still scared, but they were listening. But speeches don't cure neurotoxins. I was back in my office, staring at the map of Sector 7, the hydro plant. It was a labyrinth of tunnels and water, a tactical nightmare. My secure line rang. Unknown number. I knew who it was before I answered. Speaker, I said, putting it on the desk. Trace it, I mouthed to Jess. That was a stirring speech, Sloane. Very patriotic. I almost teared up. Cut the crap, Kale, I said. I know where you are, Sector 7. My troops are 10 minutes out. You're done. Oh, I know you're coming, Kale chuckled. I'm counting on it. In fact, if you look at your tactical map, you'll see I've already armed the perimeter. I looked at the screen. Heat signatures were flaring around the hydro plant. Massive ones. Explosives, I whispered. You rigged the dam. If your troops cross the perimeter line, Kale said, I blow the dam. The floodwaters will wipe out the lower sector. Thousands of civilians drowned. You're bluffing, I said, my grip tightening on the desk. You claim to be a patriot. You won't kill your own people. I am cleansing the weak, Kale said. But there is an alternative. I'm listening. You come alone, Kale said. No troops, no weapons, just you. You walk into the plant, you surrender yourself to me. And if I do, he gives you the antidote, the real one, not a fake. I give you the vial that brings your husband back. You trade your life for his sanity, and a dam stays intact. Jess was frantically shaking her head. Don't do it, it's a trap. I knew it was a trap, but I also knew Varic was dying. Every hour he spent in the feral state, the damage to his brain became more permanent. And if the dam blew, the blood of thousands would be on my hands. How do I know you have it? I asked. I'm sending you a sample data file now, Kale said, a ping on my screen. I forwarded it to Dr. Eris immediately. 10 seconds later, Eris messaged back. It's legitimate. It's the enzyme structure we were missing. It was real. You have 1 hour, General. Come alone or watch the city drown. Click. I stood up. I reached into my drawer and pulled out my sidearm. I checked the magazine. Full. Jess, I said, tell the troops to hold the perimeter. Do not engage. Sloane, you can't, Jess cried. He's going to kill you. Maybe, I said, holstering the weapon, but he forgot who he's dealing with. He thinks he summoned a damsel to a dungeon. I grabbed my coat. He just invited the logistician into the supply room, and I know exactly where the explosive crates are stored. Chapter 16. The Walk. Rain in the Northern Territory was usually cold, but tonight it felt like ice. It sleeted sideways, stinging my face as I walked across the massive concrete causeway of the Sector 7 hydro dam. I was alone. No earpiece, no backup, just the howling wind and the roar of millions of gallons of water churning through the turbines below. My coat whipped around my legs. I kept my hands visible, raised slightly, showing I wasn't holding a weapon. But inside my coat, tucked against my ribs, my heart was hammering a frantic rhythm. Varic, Rion, Varic, Rion. The names were a mantra. They were the only things keeping my legs moving toward the dark, gaping maw of the facility entrance. I wasn't just walking into a trap. I was analyzing it. This was the curse of being a logistician. Even when walking to my death, I couldn't stop auditing the environment. I scanned the perimeter fence. The sensors were rigged with C4, sloppy wiring, visible even in the dark. Amateur, I thought. Kyle is a soldier, not an engineer. He placed the explosives for maximum visual impact, not structural failure. If he blew those charges, the dam wouldn't breach the spillway first. That gave me a variable. It gave me time. I reached the main blast doors. They were open, a welcoming mouth of darkness. Standing in the shadows were 2 Iron Order guards, their faces covered by tactical masks. They held assault rifles leveled at my chest. Arms up, one barked. Coat open. I complied, unbuttoning my trench coat to reveal my black tactical pants and a simple gray tank top. No body armor, no hidden holsters. I had left my gun in the car just as Kyle demanded. "Check her boots," the other guard grunted. They patted me down roughly. Their hands lingered a little too long, a power play designed to make me feel small. I didn't flinch. I stared at the rain slicking the concrete over their shoulders. "Are you done petting me?" I asked, my voice flat and bored. "Or do you need me to cough?" The first guard stiffened, grabbing my arm hard enough to bruise. "Watch your mouth, Omega. You're a prisoner." "I'm a guest," I corrected, shaking his hand off with a sharp jerk of my elbow. "Your boss invited me, and if you keep me waiting in the rain, he's going to be very disappointed that his leverage caught pneumonia." The guard hesitated, then stepped back, gesturing with his rifle barrel. "Move, central control room. He's waiting." I walked into the facility. The air changed instantly, humid, smelling of grease and stagnant water. The hum of the turbines vibrated through the metal grating of the floor. I memorized the layout as I walked. Fire suppression system. Nitrogen-based. Good. Ventilation shafts. Dangerously exposed. Control panel conduit. North wall. Kyle thought he had stripped me of weapons when he took my gun. He forgot that I built the supply chain for this entire sector. I knew every bolt, every valve, and every pressure variance in this building. I wasn't walking into a prison. I was walking into a machine, and I knew how to drive it.
Chapter 17. The Lion's Den. The central control room was a glass-walled observation deck suspended over the massive turbine hall. It was lit by the eerie blue glow of the monitors. Colonel Kale stood by the main console, looking down at the churning water below. On the desk next to him sat a small, cryo-sealed case. Inside, a single vial of blue liquid glowed faintly. The antidote. "You came," Kale said, turning around. He looked smug. He looked like a man who thought he had already won. I admit, I'm impressed. Most Omegas would be weeping in a corner by now. "I'll weep when I'm dead," I said, stopping 10 feet away. "Give me the vial, Kale. I'm here. You have your prize." "Not yet," Kale tisked. He picked up the case, weighing it in his hand. "First, we broadcast. I want the world to see this. I want them to see the great General Mercer surrendering." He nodded to a soldier in the corner, who aimed a camera at us. The red light blinked on. Live feed. "Kneel," Kale commanded. It was the ultimate alpha power move. Force the Omega to their knees. Show dominance. I looked at the camera. I knew millions of people were watching. I knew the board was watching. I knew Pike was probably cheering. I looked at the vial in Kale's hand. That blue liquid was Varic's mind. It was his soul. Slowly, deliberately, I sank to my knees on the metal grating. Kale smiled, a cruel, twisting expression. He stepped closer, looming over me. "See?" He addressed the camera. "Biology is absolute. No matter what rank they wear, no matter what uniform they put on, eventually they all kneel. She broke our military, she polluted our bloodline, and now she begs." He looked down at me through my lashes. I let my scent flare. Distress, submission, fear. It rolled off me in waves, hitting his alpha instincts. He inhaled it, intoxicated by his own victory. He lowered his guard. He stepped just 1 inch closer. "You're right, Kale," I whispered, my voice trembling for the audience. "I can't leave like an alpha. Alphas are obsessed with dominance, with force." I shifted my weight, bracing my toes against the grate. I didn't lunge for him. I lunged for the manual override lever on the floor next to my knee. I yanked it. Crack! The floor beneath us shuddered violently. A blast of superheated hydraulic fluid erupted from the grate directly under Kale.
Chapter 18. Cavitation. Kale screamed as the scalding fluid hit him, blinding him instantly. He stumbled back, dropping the cryo case. It clattered onto the metal grating, sliding toward the edge of the platform, toward the drop into the turbine pit. No! I scrambled forward, diving for the case. My fingers brushed the cool metal just as it tipped over the edge. I grabbed the handle, my arm wrenching in the socket as I caught it, dangling half of my body over the railing. Below me, the turbines roared, a vortex of death. "Kill her!" Kale shrieked, clutching his burned face. "Kill her now!" The two guards raised their rifles, but I had already engaged the second phase of my plan. The lever I pulled hadn't just released steam, it had opened the cavitation vents. The air pressure in the room dropped instantly, creating a vacuum effect. The glass walls of the control room shattered inward. Wind and rain howled into the room, swirling with the debris. The guards were knocked off balance by the sudden implosion. I hauled myself back onto the platform, clutching the cryo case to my chest. "You bitch!" Kale roared. He was blind, burned, and furious. He pulled a handgun from his belt and started firing wildly in my direction. Bullets sparked off the metal railing near my head. I rolled, taking cover behind the main console. I needed a weapon. I looked around. Nothing but monitors and keyboards. Wait, the fire suppression system. Nitrogen. I crawled to the maintenance panel on the north wall. Kale was getting closer, tracking the sound of my breathing. "I can smell you, Omega. I can smell your fear." "That's not fear," I gritted out, ripping the panel cover off. "That's the smell of liquid nitrogen." I smashed the emergency canister release with my elbow. A hose whipped out, hissing violently. I grabbed the nozzle and aimed it not at Kale, but at the floor between us. A cloud of freezing white fog erupted, coating the metal grating in instant ice. Kale lunged through the fog. His boot hit the slick ice. He went down hard, his head cracking against the console desk with a sickening thud. The gun skittered away across the floor. He lay there, groaning, trying to rise, but the ice made purchase impossible. I stood up, panting, the cryo case tucked securely under my arm. I walked over to where his gun had landed and picked it up. It was heavy, cold, and necessary. I aimed it at Kale. He looked up at me with one unswollen eye. You ruined everything." "You ruined it yourself," I said coldly. "You built a bomb, Kale, but you forgot to check the schematics. I know this building better than I know my own face." I stepped over him. I didn't kill him. Death was too easy. I shot his kneecap instead. He screamed, curling into a ball. "That's for threatening my son, and the MPs will be here in 5 minutes to collect the rest."
Chapter 19. The Countdown. I didn't wait for the MPs. I grabbed a headset from the console. Jess, do you copy?" Static crackled. Then Jess's frantic voice broke through. "Sloane, we saw the feed cut out. The dam is flashing critical warnings. The sensors are going red." "I know," I yelled over the roar of the wind. "I tripped the emergency venting to create a distraction, but it destabilized the pressure integrity. The dam is going to blow its seals in less than 10 minutes. You have to get out of there." "I have the antidote," I said, checking the case again. The blue liquid was intact. "I'm moving to the exfil point. Tell Eris to prep the injection. I'm coming in hot." I sprinted out of the control room, down the catwalks. The building was groaning around me. Metal bolts popped like gunshots as the pressure mounted. Water was spraying from seams in the walls. I reached the main exit, bursting out into the rain. "Halt!" Iron Order reinforcements, a dozen of them blocking the causeway. I skidded to a stop. I raised Kale's gun, but there were too many of them. "Drop the case," the lead soldier yelled. I looked at the case. Then I looked at the dam wall towering above us. A spiderweb crack was spreading rapidly through the concrete. "You boys might want to look up," I shouted. They looked. At that exact moment, the primary seal failed. A jet of water, pressurized to thousands of pounds per square inch, blasted through the wall like a laser beam. It cut through the causeway 20 feet behind the soldiers, slicing the concrete in half. The ground shook. The soldiers panicked, scattering. I didn't scatter. I saw my opening. A maintenance motorbike was parked near the gate. I holstered the gun, strapped the case to my chest with my belt, and sprinted for the bike. I gunned the engine just as the secondary seal blew. A wall of water began to chase me down the access road. It roared like a living thing, tearing up trees and asphalt.
I opened the throttle. The machine screamed. I leaned low, practically scraping my knees on the wet pavement. I rode like a maniac. I rode like a mother. The water nipped at my rear tire, spraying cold mist against my back. Faster, I urged the machine. Faster. I hit the incline of the canyon wall just as the main deluge swept the road away behind me. I launched the bike up the service ramp, airborne for a terrifying second, before slamming down onto the upper highway. I didn't look back at the destruction. I turned the bike toward the Citadel. "Hang on, Varic," I whispered into the wind. "I'm coming."
Chapter 20. The Injection. The Citadel was in lockdown when I skidded the bike to a halt at the medical bay entrance. I was soaked, bleeding, and shaking, but I held the case like it was the Holy Grail. "Dr. Eris!" I screamed, kicking the doors open. Eris was waiting with a team. He took the case from me, his hands trembling. He cracked the seal and pulled out the vial. "It's degrading," he said, looking at the liquid. "It's turning cloudy. We have maybe 5 minutes before it becomes inert." "Then let's go," I said. We ran to the containment wing. The sounds coming from Varic's cell were worse than before. They weren't roars anymore. They were whimpers, high-pitched, broken sounds of an animal in pain. "His brain is swelling," Eris said as we reached the door. "The toxin is liquefying his neural pathways. If this doesn't work instantly, he's gone." "Open the door," I commanded. "General, he's not restrained anymore," Eris warned. "He ripped the chains out of the floor. He is loose in there." "I said open the door." The lock hissed. I grabbed the syringe from Eris. "Lock it behind me. If I don't give the signal in 2 minutes, vent the room." "Sloane, do it." I stepped inside. The room was destroyed. The metal cot was twisted into a pretzel. The walls were dented. Varic was huddled in the far corner, pressing his head against the cold steel. He was shivering violently. He looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, the blackness leaking into the whites. Blood dripped from his nose and ears. He didn't roar. He looked at me with absolute confusion. "Help," he croaked. It was a child's voice in a warrior's body. "Hurts." It broke me, seeing the strongest man I knew reduced to this. "I know, baby," I whispered, stepping closer, holding the syringe behind my back. "I'm here to make it stop." He flinched as I approached. "No, smell wrong. Smell like death." "I smell like rain," I said softly, stepping into his space. "I smell like the dam I just blew up to get back to you. I smell like your wife." I reached out to cup his cheek. He leaned into it for a second, seeking comfort, before the toxins spiked again. He snarled, grabbing my wrist. His grip was bone-crushing. "Liar!" he screamed, raising his other hand to strike. I didn't pull away. I stepped into the strike. His fist collided with my shoulder. I heard something crack, my collarbone maybe, a rib. The pain was blinding white light. I screamed, but I didn't let go. I used the momentum of his hit to jam the needle into his neck. "Come back to me," I sobbed, depressing the plunger. Varic froze. The blue liquid emptied into his vein. He gasped, his entire body seizing up. He released my wrist and fell backward, crashing onto the floor. He began to convulse, foaming at the mouth. "Varic!" I dropped to my knees, ignoring the screaming pain in my shoulder. I grabbed his head, holding him through the seizure. "Breathe! You have to breathe!" His back arched. His heart stopped beating for a terrifying second. Then a massive inhalation. He went limp. Silence filled the room. I leaned over him, putting my ear to his chest. Thump, thump, thump. Slow, steady. I looked at his face. The tension was gone. The feral snarl smoothed out. I watched his eyes. Slowly, painfully, his eyelids fluttered open. The black was gone. They were warm, rich chocolate brown. He blinked, focusing on my face. He saw the blood on my forehead. He saw the tears. He lifted a trembling hand to touch my cheek. "Sloane?" he rasped, his voice thick, but his. Why are you crying?" I collapsed onto his chest, weeping uncontrollably. "You're back," I choked out. "You're back."
Chapter 21. The Fracture. The first thing I felt was the throbbing in my shoulder. It was a deep, rhythmic ache that synced with my heartbeat.
The second thing I felt was the warmth. A hand. Large, calloused, and trembling slightly, resting against my uninjured cheek. I opened my eyes. The harsh lights of the containment cell were gone, replaced by the soft dimness of a private recovery room. I shifted, and a sharp hiss of pain escaped my lips. "Don't move," a voice rasped. It was wrecked, raw from hours of screaming, but it was sane. I turned my head. Varic was sitting in the chair next to my bed. He looked like he had been through a war. His eyes were shadowed, his jaw unshaven, and he was still wearing the tattered remains of his dress uniform pants. But the most terrifying thing wasn't his appearance. It was his expression. He was looking at the sling around my arm with a look of absolute devastating horror. "Varic?" I whispered. My voice was scratchy. He flinched. He pulled his hand away from my face as if he had burned me. "I broke it," he said softly. He didn't look at my eyes. He stared at the blue cast on my shoulder. The X-ray, hairline fracture of the clavicle, severe bruising on the ribcage. "It's fine," I said, trying to sit up. "I've had worse from training drills." "I did it," he interrupted, his voice cracking. "I struck you. I looked at my mate and I wanted to kill her, and then I hit her." He stood up, backing away from the bed. The air in the room grew heavy with his distress, the scent of burnt wood and ash. "I am a monster, Sloane. Kale was right. I am unstable." "Stop it," I commanded. I reached out with my good arm, but he was out of range. I closed my eyes and reached out with my mind instead. I hunted for the bond, the golden wire that had been cut. I found the frayed ends in the darkness of my mind and pulled. "Varic," he gasped. His head snapped up. The connection slammed back into place. It wasn't static anymore. It was a flood. I felt his grief, his self-hatred, his terror, and he felt my pain, my relief, and my fierce, unyielding love. "You were drugged," I said, projecting the words straight into his mind through the bond. "You didn't hit me. The toxin hit me. You fought it. You came back." "I hurt you," he whispered, tears standing in his eyes. "You saved me," I corrected, "by waking up. Now get over here, Supreme Commander. That is an order." He hesitated, battling his own guilt, but the command in my voice and the pull of the bond was too strong. He walked to the bed. He knelt down, burying his face in the mattress near my hip, careful not to touch my injury. "I'm so sorry," he sobbed into the sheets. "I know. Now stop crying. We have a city to fix." Chapter 22. The Letter. By the next morning, the physical pain was managed by painkillers, but the headache of bureaucracy was just beginning. I was sitting up in the hospital bed, eating green jello and reviewing the damage reports on a datapad. Varic had disappeared an hour ago, saying he had administrative matters to handle. When he returned, he wasn't wearing his uniform. He was wearing civilian clothes, jeans and a black sweater. He looked like a civilian. He held a piece of paper in his hand. "What is that?" I asked, putting down the spoon. "My resignation," Varic said quietly. He placed the paper on my tray table. "I have drafted the order. I am transferring Supreme Command to General Pike, effective immediately. I will submit myself for a dishonorable discharge and voluntary exile to the Northern Wastelands." I stared at the paper. Then I stared at him. "Are you high?" I asked. "Sloane, the people saw me," he argued, his voice tight. "They saw a beast in a cage. They saw me foaming at the mouth. They will never trust me again. I am a liability to the stability of this region." I picked up the paper. I read it. It was beautifully written, tragic, and noble. I ripped it in half. Then I ripped the halves into quarters. "Sloane, you listen to me, you dramatic oaf," I snapped, wincing as the movement pulled at my shoulder. "You don't get to quit. I didn't ride a motorcycle through a collapsing dam and blow up a terrorist cell just so you could go feel sorry for yourself in a cabin in the woods. It's not about me," he shouted, pacing the small room. "It's about the image of the Alpha, and Alpha must be in control. I lost control." "Good," I yelled back. Let them see it. Let them see that you bled. Let them see that you broke, because that makes you real, Varic. The people don't need a statue. They need a man who knows what it's like to survive hell. I pointed a finger at him. You think Kale won if you stepped down? Kale wanted to prove that biology rules us. If you quit because you're afraid of your own wolf, then he was right. Proving him wrong means getting back in that uniform, walking into the war room, and staring down every person who doubts you. Varic stopped pacing. He looked at the pile of confetti on my tray. You destroyed official government stationery, he muttered, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. I'll destroy you if you try to leave me with all this paperwork, I warned. I am a logistician, Varic. I manage logistic lines, not egos. Put your uniform on. We have a son to pick up. He looked at me, really looked at me, with that worshipful gaze returning to his eyes. You are terrifying, he whispered. I know, that's why you married me.
Chapter 23. The Drug Dealer and the Baby. The reunion was not what I expected. We took an unmarked car to the lower sector. The safe house was actually the back room of a neon-lit pawn shop called Ratbag's Emporium. When we walked in, flanked by Kyra and her sniper squad, the sight that greeted us almost made Varic draw his weapon. Ratbag, a man with a cybernetic eye, tattoos covering his neck, and a reputation for selling illegal suppressants, was sitting in a rocking chair. He was holding Rion, and he was singing a lullaby that sounded suspiciously like a drinking song about pirates. "Well, blow me down," Ratbag grinned, his gold tooth flashing as he saw us. "The power couple. The kid's a natural, General. He tried to dismantle my prosthetic arm. Good grip." "Give me my son," Varic said, his voice thick with emotion. Ratbag handed Rion over. Varic took the baby as if he were made of glass. He held him close, inhaling his scent, checking him for scratches. Rion, sensing his father's distress, cooed and patted Varic's face with a chubby hand. I watched Varic's shoulders finally drop. The tension that had held him since the gas attack evaporated. "He's safe," Varic whispered into the baby's neck. "He's safe." "Safe as houses," Ratbag said, wiping his hands on his greasy vest. "Although you owe me for the nappies. That kid poops like a biological weapon." "I'll double your fee," I said, stepping up to touch Rion's foot. "And I'm wiping your criminal record, Ratbag. You're officially a state-sponsored contractor now." Ratbag looked horrified. "Don't do that, General. Being legal ruins my street cred." We drove back to the Citadel in silence, the baby sleeping between us in the back seat. Varic kept one hand on Rion and the other hand gripping mine. "He doesn't smell the monster on me," Varic murmured, watching Rion sleep. I was afraid he would scream when I touched him. "He knows his pack. He knows his father," I said softly. But as we approached the Citadel skyline, glowing against the night sky, the mood shifted. We weren't just parents returning home. We were commanders returning to a crime scene. "We need to find out who gave KL the codes," Varic said, his voice hardening. KL was a colonel, but he didn't have the clearance to bypass the Gala security. "I know," I said, pulling a small wet data drive from my pocket. When I was in the control room, before I iced KL, I ripped the drive from his main console. Everything is on here. Varic looked at the drive. "You stole his data while the room was imploding?" "I multitasked," I shrugged. "Let's go hunt a traitor."
Chapter 24. The Money Trail. The data drive was encrypted, but I had the best cryptographers in the Northern Territory. Within an hour of returning to the penthouse, we had the files open on the main screen. It wasn't just a terrorist cell, it was a payroll. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a recurring transfer. "Shell companies, offshore accounts in the dead zone, but if you trace the routing numbers, they loop back to the Citadel," Varic finished, his eyes narrowing. Someone inside the government was funding the Iron Order, paying for the gas, the weapons, the dam explosives. I scrolled down to the communications logs.
KL had been emailing someone with the handle Patriot_1. The emails were damning. They contained troop movements, my schedule, and the security codes for the gala. "Can we trace the IP?" Varic asked. "Already did," I said. "It's masked through a dozen proxies, but look at the timestamp on this message." I highlighted a specific email sent 3 days ago. Subject: the pacifier. Deploy the package to General Mercer's office. That was sent at 11:45 a.m., I said, during the council session. So the sender wasn't in the session, Varic deduced. No, I corrected. I checked the security logs for the council chamber. At 11:45 a.m. exactly, one person stepped out of the room to take a personal call. I pulled up the security footage. Grainy black and white video showed a man stepping into the hallway. He checked his watch. He typed a message on his phone. He smiled. Varic stood up slowly. The air around him crackled with ozone. Senator Thorne. Elise's uncle, the man who had visited my office to threaten me, the man who hated Omegas in power. He didn't just want political reform, he wanted a coup. He used the Iron Order to destabilize you so he could step in as the sane alternative. He tried to kill my wife, Varic growled. He tried to kill my son. And he's still in the building, I realized, checking the active roster. He's in the executive wing right now, probably waiting for news that I drowned and you were executed. Varic reached for his sidearm. I'm going to pay the senator a visit. We do this by the book, Varic, I warned, grabbing my own gun, with my good arm. We arrest him, we try him, we don't martyr him. I make no promises, Varic said.
Chapter 25: The Trojan Horse. We moved through the Citadel corridors like ghosts. It was late, 0200 hours. The halls were empty, save for the night shift patrols. We headed for the executive wing, but as we approached the elevator bank, something felt wrong. The silence was too heavy. "Where are the guards?" I whispered. "There should be MPs posted at this junction." Varic stopped. He sniffed the air. "Gun oil," he murmured. "Fresh." Suddenly, the PA system crackled to life. It wasn't the usual automated voice. It was Senator Thorne's voice, smooth, confident. "Attention, all Citadel personnel. This is Senator Thorne, acting head of the Emergency Council. Due to the confirmed mental instability of Supreme Commander Vane and the treasonous actions of General Mercer in the destruction of Sector 7 Dam, a state of emergency is declared." I froze. He was flipping the narrative. "Warrants have been issued for their immediate termination," Thorne continued. "Any soldier who apprehends them will be promoted. Any soldier who aids them will be executed. The Praetorian Guard has assumed command." The elevator doors in front of us chimed. They slid open. Inside wasn't an empty car. It was a squad of Praetorian Guards, Varic's own elite protection detail, men he had trained, men he had trusted. They raised their rifles. "Varic, move!" I screamed. I shoved him into the adjacent stairwell alcove just as the hallway erupted in gunfire. Bullets chewed up the drywall where we had been standing a second ago. Varic returned fire blindly, grabbing me and dragging me down the stairs. "Those aren't my men," Varic gasped, seeing the way they held their rifles. "They move like mercenaries." Thorne put his own dogs in Praetorian armor, Varic spat, dragging me toward the door. "He didn't buy them," I panted, stumbling as the movement jarred my broken shoulder. "He convinced them you were feral. He used the video." We scrambled down the stairs, boots clanging on metal. Above us, the door burst open. "Clear the stairwell," a voice shouted. "Kill on sight." We were trapped. We couldn't go up to the penthouse, it would be swarming. We couldn't go to the war room, Pike was there. "The sub-basement," Varic said, kicking open the door to the maintenance level, the old tunnels.
We burst into the dark, damp corridors of the sub-basement. We ran until my lungs burned, finding a heavy maintenance door that Varic barred from the inside with a steel pipe. We stood in the dark, listening to the boots hammering overhead. We were the leaders of the Northern Territory 10 minutes ago. Now we were fugitives in our own home, and Ryan was upstairs, hidden in the penthouse with Kyra's squad. "They have the high ground," Varic whispered, checking his ammo. "We have 1 magazine each. And a USB drive," I added, clutching the data in my pocket. "And we have one thing Thorn doesn't." "What's that?" "We know how the ventilation system works," I said, a grim smile invisible in the dark. "If he wants to play dirty, I'm going to turn off the air."
Chapter 26. The Rat Run. There is nothing quite as humbling as crawling through an HVAC duct with a broken collarbone, while the man you married, the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, stares at your butt. "Keep your eyes on the map, Varic," I hissed, dragging myself forward with my good arm. The metal was cold, dusty, and smelled of recirculated office air. "Not on my ass." "I am ensuring your tactical positioning," Varic whispered from behind me. Even in the dark, I could hear the smirk in his voice. "And for the record, it is a very strategic asset." "I hate you," I grunted, squeezing through a narrow junction. Pain flared in my shoulder, white-hot and blinding. I bit my lip to keep from screaming. "Sloane." Varic's voice instantly lost its playfulness. He crawled closer, his hand resting gently on my ankle. "Stop. You're hurting. Let me go first. I can kick the grates out." "No," I wheezed, resting my forehead against the galvanized steel. "You don't know the layout. If we take a left turn up ahead, we end up in the laundry chute. If we take a right, we hit the primary server cooling intake. We need the servers." "Why the servers?" "Because Thorn controls the narrative right now. He has the PA system, the screens, the external comms. As long as he's the voice in everyone's ear, we're just fugitives. I need to take his microphone away." We crawled for what felt like hours. My knees were bruised, my palms scraped raw. The bond between us was a lifeline in the dark. I could feel Varic's simmering rage, a low, constant heat, but he kept it reined in for me. He was the nuclear bomb, I was the guidance system. Finally, we reached a vertical shaft. The air rushing up was frigid. "This is it, server room B. It handles the internal broadcast network." I peered through the slats of the vent cover. The room below was a forest of blinking blue lights and humming towers, and standing guard by the door were 2 Praetorian guards, my guards, men I had shared coffee with. "They aren't wearing earpieces," Varic noted, peering over my shoulder. "They've been cut off from the main channel. Thorn doesn't trust them to hear orders, just to stand guard." "We can't shoot them," I said. "They're following orders. They think we're traitors." "Then we sleep them," Varic said. He reached into his belt and pulled out a smoke grenade he had scavenged from the stairwell skirmish. "Do you trust me?" "I do, with my life. With my dignity, less so." He popped the pin and dropped the grenade through the slats. Hiss! Thick white smoke flooded the room below. The guards shouted, coughing, blinded. "Now," Varic said. He kicked the grate, it crashed down, and the Supreme Commander dropped into the smoke like a vengeful shadow. Chapter 27. Turning Up the Heat. I dropped down after him, landing awkwardly and stifling a groan as my shoulder jarred. By the time I stood up, the fight was over. The 2 guards were unconscious, slumped against the wall. Varic hadn't killed them. He had used precision nerve pinches to knock them out. "Clear," he said, locking the door. I ran to the main console. My fingers flew over the keyboard. "Okay, Thorn locked the system out," I muttered. "Biometric encryption. He's using the emergency council override." "Can you crack it?" Varic asked, reloading his pistol. "Crack it? No, that would take hours." I pulled a panel off the wall, exposing the thick bundles of fiber optic cables. "But I can bypass the software if I make the hardware scream." "Sloane, what are you doing?"
The servers have a thermal failsafe, I explained, grinning wickedly. If they get too hot, they shut down to prevent melting. I'm going to reverse the cooling fans. I typed in the command code. Warning, system overheat imminent. Confirm, I said, hitting enter. A loud clunk echoed through the room. The hum of the fans changed pitch. Instead of blowing cold air onto the server racks, they stopped, reversed, and started sucking the hot air from the exhaust vents back into the core. The temperature in the room began to climb instantly. 70 degrees, 80 degrees. It's getting warm, Varic noted, wiping sweat from his brow. Give it 2 minutes. At 120 degrees, the broadcast nodes fry. Thorn loses his live feed. The screens go black. And when the screens go black, we upload the truth, Varic finished, holding up the USB drive we had stolen from Kale. Exactly. I'm queuing the upload to the emergency channel. The moment the main system dies, this drive takes over. Every screen in the Citadel will play Thorn's emails, his bank transfers, and Kale's confession. Beep, beep, beep. Temperature 110 degrees. The room was a sauna. Sweat dripped down my back. Come on, I whispered to the machine. Burn, baby, burn. Suddenly, the door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in. Open up. It was General Pike's voice. I know you're in there. The heat sensors are going haywire. Varic moved to the door, leveling his weapon. Pike, Varic growled, his voice low and dangerous. I was hoping for a chat. Boom! A breaching charge blew the here doors off. The door fell inward. General Pike stood there, flanked by a squad of 6 tactical soldiers. Fire! Pike screamed.
Chapter 28. The Kill Box. The server room was tight, rows of tall metal racks creating narrow aisles. It was a kill box. Cover! Varic roared, shoving me behind a server tower. Bullets shredded the metal casing above my head, sending sparks showering down. The heat in the room was stifling now, 115 degrees and climbing. Varic didn't hide. He moved. He was a blur of motion, using the tight quarters to his advantage. He slid between the racks, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Bang! Bang! 2 of Pike's soldiers went down, clutching their legs. Varic was shooting to incapacitate, not kill. They were his men. Stop shooting! I yelled over the gunfire. Check your HUDs. Check the timestamp on the treason order. It's a forgery. Liar! Pike bellowed, firing a shotgun blindly down the aisle. You're done, Mercer. You're just a confused little girl who got in over her head. That did it. The confused little girl comment? I looked at the temperature gauge. 119 degrees. 1 more degree. I grabbed a loose cooling hose from the wall, one I had disconnected. It was venting superheated exhaust air. I waited for Pike to step past my row. He moved into view, sweating, red-faced, hunting for Varic. Hey, Pike, I called out. He spun around, raising the shotgun. I aimed the hose at his face. A blast of pressurized chemical coolant hit him point blank. The liquid boiled on contact with the air, freezing his skin and burning his eyes chemically. He screamed, dropping the gun and clutching his eyes. It wasn't enough to burn him permanently, but it was enough to blind him with dry heat and panic. Varic materialized from the smoke. He didn't use his gun. He grabbed Pike by the tactical vest and slammed him into the server rack. The metal dented. You called my wife confused, Varic growled, lifting the 250-pound general off the floor with one hand. Sir, please, Pike wheezed. She is not confused, Varic snarled. She is the only reason you are still breathing. He headbutted Pike. The sound was sickening. Pike went limp, dropping to the floor like a sack of potatoes. The other soldiers froze, watching their commander fall. Crack! A loud electrical pop echoed through the room. The lights flickered and died. The hum of the servers stopped. Silence. Then a soft ding from my console. Upload complete. Check your screens, I ordered the soldiers, stepping out from behind the rack, holding my injured arm. Check your data pads, right now. One of the soldiers hesitated, then looked down at his wrist unit. His eyes went wide. Holy shit, he whispered. It's Thorn. The emails.
He paid the Iron Order. The soldiers lowered their weapons. They looked at Varic, then at me. They snapped to attention. "Orders, Supreme Commander?" the lead soldier asked. Varic straightened his jacket, stepping over Pike's unconscious body. He said, "Secure this room, and get a medic for General Mercer. She's running the revolution with a broken bone."
Chapter 29. The Hostage. We had the truth out. We had the loyalty of the troops back, but we didn't have Thorn. "He's in the penthouse," I said, watching the security feeds on the soldier's datapad. He barricaded himself in the executive suite. My stomach dropped. "The penthouse," I repeated. "Varic, Rian." We had left Rian in the penthouse with Kyra's squad. If Thorn was in there— "Move," Varic barked. We didn't take the stairs this time. We took the elevator. The soldiers flanked us, forming a protective ring. The elevator ride to the top floor took 30 seconds. It felt like 30 years. "Kyra is good," I whispered, clutching Varic's hand. "She's the best sniper in the division. She wouldn't let him near the nursery." "Thorn has personal security," Varic said grimly. "Mercenaries, not soldiers." The doors opened. The penthouse foyer was a war zone. Furniture was overturned. Bullet holes pockmarked the walls. 2 mercenary bodies lay on the floor, but there was no sound of fighting. "Kyra?" I called out, raising my gun. "In here, General," a strained voice called from the living room. We rushed in. Kyra was slumped against the kitchen island. She was bleeding from a gunshot wound to the leg. Her squad was positioned around the room, weapons trained on the nursery door. The door to the nursery, the bulletproof glass room I had installed, was closed. Standing inside it, holding a pistol to the glass, was Senator Thorn, and inside the pen, crying in his crib, was Rian. Thorn saw us and smiled. He held up a detonator. "Stop," he screamed. "One step closer and I blow the glass. I'll bring the whole ceiling down on this brat." Varic froze. The growl that ripped from his throat was pure vibration, shaking the floor. "Let him go, Thorn," Varic said, his voice trembling with the effort to not shift. "You've lost. The data is out. The army is ours." "I know," Thorn yelled. He looked unhinged. His tie was crooked, his eyes wild. "I saw the broadcast. You ruined me. My career is over. My reputation is ash." "So you take a baby hostage?" I stepped forward, holstering my gun slowly to show I was disarming. "That's your play? You're not a politician, Thorn. You're a coward." "I'm a pragmatist," Thorn spat. "I need a helicopter. I need safe passage to the dead zone, and 50 million credits in an untraceable account. You give me that, and I walk away. You don't, and the air dies." I looked at Rian. He was screaming, his face red. He was terrified. I looked at the glass. It was bulletproof. Thorn couldn't shoot in easily, but he could detonate the charges he had rigged to the doorframe. I needed an angle. I looked at Kyra. She was on the floor, clutching her leg, but her sniper rifle was lying next to her. She caught my eye. She gave a microscopic nod. "Okay," I said, raising my hands. "Okay, Thorn, you win. We'll get you the helicopter." "Sloane?" Varic looked at me, shocked. "We have our son, Varic," I said, my voice breaking. "What choice do I have? I'm not a general right now. I'm a mother." I turned to the soldiers behind us. "Get him a pilot, clear the roof." Thorn grinned. "Smart girl, finally learned your place." I stepped closer to the glass. Can I see him, please? I need to know he's okay." "Stay back," Thorn warned, waving the detonator. "I'm unarmed," I sobbed, letting the tears fall. "Please, he's crying. He needs his mother." I let my scent flood the room, pure, concentrated distress. It was thick, sweet, and suffocating. It was also a signal. Distress pheromones trigger a biological response in alphas. It makes them arrogant. It makes them feel dominant. Thorn puffed up his chest. He lowered the detonator slightly, distracted by my display of submission. "Look at him," Thorn sneered, turning slightly to look at Rian. "Pathetic." He turned his back to the room for 1 second. "Now!" I screamed. Chapter 30. The Shot. Kyra didn't stand up. She didn't need to. From her position on the floor, she swung the heavy sniper rifle up. She didn't aim for Thorn. The glass was bulletproof. She aimed for the wall next to the doorframe. Boom.
The high-caliber round punched through the drywall, hitting the electrical junction box that powered the door locks. Sparks showered down. The magnetic lock failed. The door clicked open a fraction of an inch. Thorne spun around, realizing his mistake. He raised the detonator, but Varic was already moving. He didn't run, he launched himself. He hit the glass wall with his shoulder, shattering the already weakened frame. The glass spider-webbed and caved in. Thorne screamed as the shards rained down on him. He tried to press the button. I didn't let him. I dove through the opening, sliding across the floor on my knees, ignoring the glass cutting into my legs. I grabbed Thorne's wrist, the one holding the detonator, and twisted it with every ounce of strength I had left. Snap. Thorne howled, dropping the device. Varic was on him a second later. He grabbed Thorne by the throat and lifted him off the ground, slamming him into the far wall. "You touched my son," Varic whispered. It wasn't a shout. It was a promise of death. Thorne clawed at Varic's hand, his feet kicking in the air. "Mercy, please." "Mercy is for soldiers," Varic snarled. "You are a politician." "Varic, don't kill him!" I yelled, scrambling to the crib. I scooped Rian up, shielding his body with mine. "Rian is watching. Don't let his first memory be his father murdering a man." Varic froze. His hand was still tight around Thorne's throat. Thorne was turning blue. Varic looked at me. He looked at the baby in my arms. The red haze in his eyes cleared. He took a deep breath. He dropped Thorne. Thorne collapsed, gasping for air, clutching his neck. "Arrest him," Varic commanded the soldiers who rushed in. "Put him in the deepest, darkest hole we have, and ensure he lives long enough to see his trial." Varic walked over to me. He stepped over the glass. He fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around both of us. "He's okay," I wept, checking Rian over. "He's just scared. He's okay." Varic buried his face in my neck, shaking uncontrollably. The adrenaline crash was hitting him. "It's over," he whispered. "It's finally over." I looked around the room, the shattered glass, the blood, the unconscious traitor on the floor. I shifted Rian to my hip, wincing as my shoulder protested. "Not yet," I said, looking out the broken window at the city below, where the screens were still flashing the truth about the Iron Order. "We won the battle," I said, leaning my head against Varic's, "but now we have to rebuild the world." Varic kissed my forehead, then Rian's. "We will," he promised. "Tomorrow. Tonight, we sleep." And for the first time in a week, the silence in the room wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. The Omega's command was absolute, and the Alpha was finally home.